Working directly with SVG code can take up a lot of time to create what you want. There are some advantages to it because, of course, working with the code itself, you can do pretty much whatever it allows, but it can be inefficient. There are some programs that will actually create SVG code for you. The most commonly used professional level one is going to be Adobe Illustrator. So if you're familiar with Adobe products, or especially Photoshop, Illustrator is their product that works with vector-based graphics. If money's more of an issue, Inkscape is probably the most commonly used free program that works with vector graphics. So if I launch Illustrator really quickly, I can show you a little bit of what it looks like, and we can take a look at Inkscape later. Currently, Adobe uses a subscription-based model that requires you to pay monthly or annually, and that is the Adobe Creative Cloud. CS6, which is what I have here, is the last version that didn't require an annual subscription. So you see some people still using CS6, you'll see other people using CC, depending on if they're on the subscription model or not. Of course, CS6 is no longer updated, so there's some new fancy toys and stuff in CC that I don't have access in this version. So here is the workspace, the artboard, the canvas, whatever you want to call it. What SVG calls it and what Illustrator calls it aren't always the same. We have our tools on the left here, and it doesn't really matter too much what I do right now because I just want to show you a few things. So I'm just going to draw out a few items. Let's give this one a color, and we can give this one a gradient, and we can put some text in here. Maybe make it larger, and just to kind of see how some of these things render. If we want to create custom polygons or polylines or stuff like that, we have like this pen tool. We can also use the pen tool to create really nice curves, and curves are a lot more difficult if you're working with the raw code. If I want to get rid of that, and I'll show how to do some of these a little bit more clearly later. This is just to sort of show you what the code is going to look like. If I want to grab the type tool, which this is really hard to do with SVG code, I can type on this path that I've just defined. And I think that's a decent display of a few things really quickly. Maybe add in a circle. I'll hold shift to make a perfect circle, and let's not hold shift to make an ellipse. Anything else I want to create? They do have a star tool, which is nice. Let's go ahead and save this. Now by default it says Adobe Illustrator. That's their proprietary file format, but we can also go down here to SVG. I'm just going to save it onto my desktop. I'll call it an example. We'll show how to create some nicer things in Illustrator later. We've got different things here. Let's just stick with this one right here, just what it shows as the default. And I'll press OK. And I'll go ahead and quit. And here is my SVG file. Now if I open with text edit, you can see a lot of those same things that we looked at before. Now it's not formatted very nicely. Things aren't spaced out in a way that's easy for me to read because Illustrator was doing it. Illustrator doesn't care about white space. The computer doesn't care about white space. White space helps us. There's all this extra stuff in there that makes it a little bit hard to read, but for the most part, if you're looking and paying attention, you can start seeing stuff. So we've got rect elements. We've got this linear gradient. Notice they didn't put their linear gradient inside of a def element. It's just sitting there by itself. Another rect element. Here's that text that I created, the hello there, and it's got a transform on it. Polygon points, path fill, and then what is this? This is a mess. So I mentioned that text on a path, that's almost impossible to do in just regular SVG code. That's what this is. All of this mess here is this stuff. It is actually defining each one of those characters as its own little text element with a transform on it, and that's really rather strange, but that's how it does it. And you've got a circle and an ellipse and a polygon, and you can see here all these little points and everything, and so it works, but it's not exactly the cleanest. But you can make graphics in Illustrator or in Inkscape, and then we can edit the SVG code afterwards to add in stuff like interactivity or to clean up the code to make it more efficient, stuff like that. So being able to have access to some of these programs is a great way to save some time, and then later you can go in and do some modifications to have a little bit more customization and a little bit more flexibility in what you want to do with it. And that's what we'll do in some of the upcoming videos, is take something that we've created in a program like Illustrator and Inkscape and then modify it